Aye.
Report of the Finance Committee on a commercial facility agreement between the Government of the Republic of Ghana, represented by the Ministry of Finance and Dutch Bank SPA, as arranger, agent and original lenders for an amount of €12,766,928.10 to finance the expansion and rehabilitation of the Keita water supply system.
The report is duly presented and is for distribution to honorable members. Honorable members, item listed 6, motion. Honorable Minister for Information.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this Honorable House thanks His Excellency the President for the message on the state of the nation which he delivered to Parliament on Thursday, 20th February 2020. Mr. Speaker, as the House will recall, on that day, our colleagues on the minority side excused themselves from business in the House. Our colleagues on the minority, after they had excused themselves, also observed that the majority extended their occupation of the House onto some of the minority benches, perhaps a sign of what the House will look like in the near future. The nation itself was caught up in the parliamentary drama, but this morning we gathered to have an opportunity to have a detailed examination of the President's State of the Nation address. May I admonish colleagues that in the future we avoid these exercises and endeavor to conduct parliamentary business in a manner that upholds the decorum and authority of this august House. Mr. Speaker, the President appeared before the House to fulfill a constitutional obligation under Article 67. He spent time speaking to a number of themes, some of which I'll highlight as we start the debate this morning, but principally speaking to the progress that has been made by the Republic across the sectors that he spoke to. The President spoke to raw facts. In our debate today, we'll be putting those facts in context. Because, Mr. Speaker, fact without context is often not understood. And we will be giving general meaning to what has happened in Ghana in the last 3 years under the Akufo-Addo administration. Right, Honorable Speaker, the first thing that the President spoke about is the subject of Ghana rising on the global stage. The Ghana which around 1957 was the leader and beacon of hope for Africa, which around 2016 was now dwindling in growth, dwindling in foreign direct investments, not necessarily the leading tourism destination on the continent, and a nation that had literally become a beggar nation. By that time, we had to go to the IMF asking for a bailout. We no longer looked like the nation, quote, that was capable of managing its own affairs. But 3 years on, His Excellency the President reports to this House that the world now receives us with enthusiasm, from Europe to the Americas to Asia and back home in Africa. Mr. Speaker, this has not been by happenstance. It's been by a clearly thought through strategy that has been well executed. And 3 things have been done in that regard. First is that the Akufo-Addo administration has defined a very clear, compelling dream and vision for Ghana. This is what we call Ghana Beyond Aid, and I'll speak to that shortly. Secondly, the administration has successfully sold this vision locally and internationally to the admiration of everybody. And thirdly, the administration has backed this vision with good policies that are now translating into the tangible benefits that are making Ghana reclaim its pride of place globally and on the African continent. Ghana Beyond Aid, Mr. Speaker, is to build an optimistic, self-confident and prosperous nation through the creative exploitation of our human and natural resources and operating within a democratic, open and fair society in which mutual trust and economic opportunities exist for all. Mr. Speaker, it's this vision that has been successfully sold and implemented, which is the reason for which we are resuming our pride of place all over the world. Rhetoric matters, but it has not just been empty rhetoric. It's been backed by an improved macroeconomic environment and a bright investment horizon, for which reason today the foreign direct investments that we were losing are now coming back, and we are reclaiming our place as the highest recipient of FDI in West Africa, at least in the year 2018. This rhetoric has been backed by a well-thought-through diaspora attraction program. That's why you are noticing that thousands of tourists are flocking into the jurisdiction, first from the year of return and hopefully in the decade afterwards that we call beyond the return. It's been backed by leadership, for which reason now the entire West Africa is now gravitating back to Ghana to provide leadership in one of our current challenges, that is the fight against terrorism. And it's also been backed by a vision and commitment to provide a strong economic base for the entire African continent, for which reason, Mr. Speaker, Ghana has also been successful in becoming the host of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So the context of our renewed respect, support, and partnership that the President speaks about is because he's articulated a strong vision for Ghana beyond aid. He has sold it well, and it is indeed beginning to bear fruit. Mr. Speaker, the second part of the President's message focused on the economy. And for all economic watchers, economic analysis will be divided between the macroeconomic analysis and the real sector analysis. For the macro analysis, I'll leave it to other colleagues who would spend some time during this debate to articulate the gains that have been made so far, the challenges that we inherited, the work that has been done, and what the horizon looks like. But Mr. Speaker, as we see clearly, and if I may quote the President in his conclusion, the state of our macroeconomy is healthier than we inherited it 3 years ago. Again, if I may quote the President of the African Development Bank on the 3rd of February 2020, he says, and I paraphrase, "No one eats macroeconomic data. Macroeconomic stability is, however, a necessary precondition if we are going to be able to engender the growth, the jobs, the incomes, and the higher quality of life that we are looking for." So, Mr. Speaker, if anybody is interested in finding out whether or not our macro improvements mean anything, what we should be looking to is, has it been followed by growth in the necessary sectors? Is that growth translating into jobs? Is it translating into incomes? And is it translating into a higher quality of life for our people? And Mr. Speaker, here we have some very good answers to give. Sometimes when you talk of Ghana's increased growth in the last 3 years, you hear some of our colleagues on the other say, "Oh, but it's simply because of oil." Mr. Speaker, as a matter of fact, no oil discovery was made during the previous 4 years. But even if it is oil, then it will be Kufuor's oil, discovered somewhere around 2007, which today will be bearing fruit if that argument will be true. But it is not exactly oil, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to start off from agriculture. Agriculture was growing at 2.9% by the year 2016, when the former administration was leaving the corridors of power. So if in 2017 you notice that agriculture is growing at 6.1%, and in 2018 about 4.8%, it's projected to grow around 6.4% in 2019 and about 5.1% by 2020, is that oil? It cannot be oil. It is as a result of intentional policies and programs that have been rolled out in agriculture that are now delivering this growth on the macro stability, this growth coming with jobs, incomes, and a better quality of life for our people. And Mr. Speaker, I want to read from page 14 of the President's State of the Nation address where he speaks about agriculture. He says, and I quote, "Mr. Speaker, I must provide some examples of what I mean by things not just occurring by happenstance, but by deliberate and meticulous planning and competent execution. We recruited some 2,700 agric extension agents to give practical expertise on the farms. We are not yet at the UN recommended ratio of 1 to 500, but we are working to get there. And it is definitely a vast improvement on the decimated department that we met on the assumption of office. With the support of Canada, 300 vehicles and 3,000 motorbikes have also been deployed around the country for ease of movement for those tasked to help farmers." Speaker, a paragraph earlier, Mr. President says, "Increased production and high yields of some foodstuffs like maize, rice, sorghum, groundnuts, soybean, cowpea, cassava, and plantain have led to a decrease in the wholesale prices in market centers. And furthermore, we are no longer importers of maize as we're reducing our dependence on rice imports and are now, in effect, net exporters of foodstuffs. Food prices are their lowest in decades. Mr. Speaker, all of this is because of the clear program of planting for food and jobs that this administration introduced. I would like to commend the Honorable Minister responsible for Agriculture, the Honorable Akufo-Addo, for the kind of work that is going on there. Mr. Speaker, beyond agriculture, having resolved Dumso, the agenda for growth in industry and services has now got the best chances of success. Indeed, even if we had no clear program for industry, just by resolving Dumso, we created a stimulant for industry to function better than it was doing prior to 2016. Manufacturers who had no electricity to run their plants in 2016 no longer needed to shut down production for half a week, because doing so will lead to low production. And if you didn't want the low production, then you had to choose high cost of fuel and generators, which will also lead you to high losses. If you didn't like that one as well, then you simply had to cut jobs. None of this was acceptable to the people of Ghana. And that was a sorry state of industry by 2016. So if indeed we did nothing at all, just by bringing back reliable energy supply, and affordable ones at that too, we're helping to boost industry. But in addition to that, Mr. Speaker, we introduced the One District, One Factory program. The visionary Akufo-Addo targeted 275 factories at the start of this industrial development program. Our colleagues on the other side at that time in 2016 told us that that One District, One Factory program was not feasible. Speaker, by extension, what it means is that if they were in power by now, there will not be a One District, One Factory program. Indeed, there will be 0 factories under such a program of that sort. Today, as the President reports, we have 181 of those factories at various stages of construction. Over 50 of them are operational. Mr. Speaker, on any day, 181 is greater than 0. With the approval of the automobile industry policy, we have also sent a very strong signal to the sector that we have policies that will grow the sector. Not only has the Kantanka fleet now got room to embark on commercially viable production, but other brands, Toyota, VW, Renault, Hyundai, Suzuki, are now heading to Ghana. And the President provides detail on when we should expect them here. If I may quote from page 60, Mr. Speaker, it says VW is building its plant at the North Industrial Area in Accra and is due to start production by the end of April. Sinotruk has begun assembling its trucks. Toyota is scheduled to start the assembly of vehicles in Tema in the last quarter of this year. We have high hopes for this new industry, which has come to join our own Kantanka. So, Mr. Speaker, additionally, in industry generally, the automobile industry is expected to see an uptick. Not only those, bauxite is now establishing its footprint after the establishment of the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation. The iron and steel industry is also expecting to see a boom after this House graciously passed the GISDEC Act on the President's request. And while we continue with all of this, we are also working to reduce the burden that the energy sector imposes on our fiscal position through the Energy Sector Reorganization Program. Mr. Speaker, services have also been doing very well in the last 3 years. But for services, I want to narrow down on the financial services sector, because the financial services sector is tied to the apron strings of the real sector. One of the functions of the real sector, one of the functions of the financial services sector, rather, is credit provision, which is a major stimulant for economic growth. But it can also be the Achilles heel of the economy, Mr. Speaker. Ghana's financial sector challenges, as we are all aware, started prior to 2016. At its peak, the Bank of Ghana reports that deposits of about some 4 million Ghanaians, totaling at least about 16 billion cedis, had been consumed. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the 2020 budget, table 3B, you get a true context of what 16 billion means. In the 2020 budget, the entirety of taxes on domestic goods and services, that is VAT, excess duty, NHIL, Get Fund, and CST, all of them come together to 19 billion. So if we're talking about 16 billion, you can see the comparatives pretty well. On the expenditure side, all the money going to the National Health Fund, GET Fund, Road Fund, petroleum-related funds, even the District Assembly's Common Fund, IGF retentions, and transfers to GMPs all put together is about 13 billion cedis. So if we're talking of 16 billion cedis, you can put it in proper context. Mr. Speaker, we're told that about 10,000 jobs at that time had virtually been lost. Reports of workers in these institutions who were being or who were working without pay abounded. Indeed, in those days, we all saw the footages on our phones and on television that if depositors went to some institutions for their money, they were met with police brutality. The risk of contagion effect was real. But the Akufo-Addo administration underwrote a Bank of Ghana proposal to resolve the financial services blues. Today, over 11 billion Ghana cedis has been paid. This week, some 5 billion Ghana cedis is commencing payment for institutions under the non-banking financial framework. Deposits of over 4 million Ghanaians, Mr. Speaker, have been saved. Can you imagine if 4 million Ghanaians had lost their deposits? Robust corporate governance mechanisms have also been put in place. And one of the exciting things is that over 7,000 jobs out of the 10,000 that have been virtually lost, over 7,000 jobs have been saved by this intervention, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this biggest bailout of at least 16 billion cedis could have done a lot of things for Ghana. It could have eliminated double track. It could have built hundreds of thousands of kilometers of roads. It could have been invested further into agri and industry and services. But because the administration is cognizant of the impact of human lives, that is why it is investing all of this amount of money to clean up the financial services sector. So we've saved over 4 million Ghanaians of their deposits, over 7,000 jobs. We've prevented a contagion effect, and we have built a more robust financial services sector. Mr. Speaker, let me take advantage of this opportunity to also call on the Bank of Ghana, the receiver, and the CBG to communicate clearly and proactively to all stakeholders to manage the expectations of depositors. They should be clear with their timelines and the instruments of payment and explain to the people what it means to pay with cash and bonds. They ought not to wait for expectations to go amiss before they explain. The Akufo-Addo administration has done a yeoman's job, and we implore them to let their management in the last mile reflect so. Mr. Speaker, another thing the President spoke about is peaceful coexistence. Sometimes we forget too soon as a country the kind of gains that we have made. But it's important to remind ourselves and to use it as a platform to build for the future. The Dankwa crisis is one such example. It was a conflict that over a decade tore brother and brother apart. It cost us tens of millions of Ghana cedis, and it ground all progress around the area to a halt. As part of the President's agenda to ensure peaceful coexistence, he stimulated the resolution of the Yendi crisis and the enskinment of a new Yana, Abukari Mahama. Dankwa has commenced the journey to glory, and we thank the President for his leadership. In similar vein, he has also appointed mediators to resolve some of the other disputes across the country. Nana Akufo-Addo believes in peaceful coexistence and will commit to investing in it. Again, in similar vein, he has spearheaded the passage of an anti-vigilantism act by this House to forestall the creeping culture of political violence in our body politic. And we must applaud him for it. On his watch, Mr. Speaker, the National Peace Council is spearheading an anti-vigilantism accord among political parties. Though our colleagues on the other side have refused to sign, this House should endeavor to call on all parties to do the honorable thing and to join the President in initiatives to ensure peaceful coexistence. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, those who are beating war drums that if the 2020 election witnesses any untoward action, it will be addressed to some quarters, should be advised to desist from it. The President is committed to a peaceful 2020 election. We believe nothing will transpire and encourage all parties to comply with the rules of engagement that are being laid down. The Speaker, to secure our peace, his administration has also been investing heavily in the security agencies. Over 600 vehicles procured for the police service. Today, many districts nationwide have augmented their police fleet and are enabling patrols that are ensuring that citizens are safer. More men are being injected into the services, and on-the-job training is being upgraded. Mr. Speaker, the military has not been left out. They have also received a fair share of equipment necessary for their work. And today, Operation Conquer Fist, among others, is delivering safety and protection to the people of Ghana. Right Honorable Speaker, the President spoke to the nation about the fight against corruption. As we are all aware, corruption cannot be successfully fought if we are only going to resort to one strong man or one macho man, to paraphrase. It is fought by building strong institutions. We have seen the best of men lead revolutions aimed at ridding the society of corruption, only for their own administrations in the very end to be accused and to be caught up in corruption. So in building a strong anti-corruption institutional framework, the President has done a number of things. At least 4 pieces of legislation have been passed in the last 3 years to support the fight against corruption. This includes the Witness Protection Act 2018, Act 975, the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2018, Act 959, the Right to Information Act 2019, Act 989, and the Companies Act, the New Companies Act 2019, Act 992. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, President Akufo-Addo's government has increased budgetary allocations to accountability institutions at least between 25 and 34% since 2017. Parliament is a beneficiary, SHRAD is a beneficiary, the judiciary, IOCO, the OSP, the police, they are all beneficiaries. He's ensuring that prosecutions are being done without political color. No wonder sometimes you hear the supporters of the governing party even accuse their own party of not taking on persons from the previous administration strongly enough, despite the fact that about 40 persons are currently before the court for corruption-related offenses. Mr. Speaker, he's also charging the anti-corruption agencies with a free hand to investigate allegations of corruption, even against government officials. And may I add, Mr. Speaker, that these institutions should help us uncover, for example, who government official one is, and hold him and his compatriots accountable for the actions that they are alleged to have committed. It will all help the fight against corruption. Mr. Speaker, investment in entrepreneurial support has also been going on. Business resource centers are being built across the country. As the President mentioned, about 37 of them have been completed so far, and 30 more are being rolled out. Yes, entrepreneurs need working capital as well as startup capital, but without technical and managerial support, they cannot even manage that capital well. The Ministry of Business Development is also doing a yeoman's job in ensuring that capital and technical knowledge is availed to young entrepreneurs across this country. Mr. Speaker, so on the back of the macro gains, young entrepreneurs, when supported technically and financially, can also flourish, and that's exactly what the Akufo-Addo administration is doing. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak briefly about public goods and services, starting with education. Today, the major point of complaint about education is a double-track system. But government is committed to completing work on the over 800 infrastructure projects nationwide aimed at eliminating the double-track system. For example, in my own constituency, Akufo-Addo Senior High School has just benefited from the completion of a dormitory block. We expect more other schools to benefit from same for the eventual rollout or the rollback of the double-track system. But not only is double-track a phenomenon for us here in Ghana, countries like Kenya want to learn from it. The problem at first in education was that majority of parents complained that they could not afford senior high school education for their children. Today, the problem is that they can have it for free, but they would like to have it on a single track. Mr. Speaker, we believe that that is a beautiful problem to have. It's a problem that this administration is committed to fixing. What is exciting? That about 1.2 million Ghanaian children are benefiting from the President's free senior high school program, the largest and most impactful social intervention program. Sports development is on the rise. About 10 youth and sports centers are being built across the country. Several sports complexes and astroturfs are also being built in various parts of the country. This will lead to an improvement in sports talent and in health conditions indeed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, social protection programs are also being improved. the Akufo administration introduced a number of social protection programs, including school feeding, LEAP, and even free maternal care. We believe that if the economic conditions of the last 8 years had not dwindled, it would have been better to maintain and build upon these social intervention programs. Mr. Speaker, thank God the MPP is back in power. Social protection programs have now been resuscitated and are being expanded. On the watch of President Akufo-Addo, school feeding programs are being expanded. LEAP is being expanded. This is boosting basic school enrollment, is boosting nutrition among school children, is also creating jobs for a lot of young women across this country. In the area of health, Mr. Speaker, not only is health insurance being improved, but a lot of health infrastructure projects are now also being completed. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, pre-hospital emergency healthcare has received a boost with over 307 ambulances, the largest fleet ever in the history of our country, and the drone delivery network that we rolled out is also delivering tens of thousands of drugs across the length and breadth of this country. Right Honorable Speaker, the roads network is now being attended to. Paragraph 867 of the budget outlines many roads that are being worked on. Digitization is now a big deal, offering a lot more efficiency and productivity, and also reducing corruption for our citizens. Mr. Speaker, the President also finally acknowledged some challenges. For example, in the area of Galamsey, that while a lot of gains have been made, the new challenges will be fought head-on. He also speaks about the fact that challenges, among other things, in domestic resource mobilization needs to be tackled so that we can raise the necessary revenues to complete the unfinished agenda. Mr. Speaker, not only have we become a healthier nation across various sectors, but we now have a bold and compelling vision to live up to. A wealthy, inclusive, sustainable, empowered, resilient nation that is Ghana beyond aid. My prayer to colleagues in this House, that now that we are on this path, we support the President and encourage him to get us to that land of milk and honey. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to move this motion.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for the motion so ably moved. Who seconds the motion?
Mr. Speaker, I beg to second the motion, and then in doing so, I'll make my own contribution. Mr. Speaker, contained in the State of the Nation address.
Just a moment, Honorable Minority Chief Whip. It's customary when this particular motion is moved on my right that there's a seconder on my left. What is the position as of now? Order.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Like you rightly said, it's not a rule, it's just a convention. Mr. Speaker, our principle is that we are not participating in this. So we will not be speaking to it. So that's why we are quiet.
Honorable Majority Leader.
Speaker, as I indicated the other day, a member of the House is not required to be in the House to participate in the voting of any question that is put in the House. After we have debated, the question we put on this motion. And any member who is not in the House, when the statement is being made, still technically is qualified to participate in the debate. Nothing prevents the minority from participating in the debate. Speaker, but the decision is totally theirs to participate or not to participate. So the Chief Whip has said that they are not going to participate. That decision is theirs and it must be respected. Except I heard him say that they have a principle not to participate. I don't know what the principle is. It's their decision. It's their decision not to participate. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to go into principles. But it's a decision. It's a decision, and the decision must be respected. As to the principle, I don't know what principle underpins this decision. But Mr. Speaker, as I said, if they opt not to participate, we can go on.
Yes.
We can go on and debate. And perhaps we can speak what they are thinking for them. Mr. Speaker, so we can go on.
Thank you very much, Honorable Majority Leader. Honorable Doctor, Chairman of the Committee of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, once more, I rise to second the motion and make my own contribution. Mr. Speaker, contained in the message on the State of the Nation address is also a state of the economy. Mr. Speaker, in the fourth year of the NPP administration, I would attempt to compare the state of the economy in 2016 to the state of the economy today. Mr. Speaker, under President John Mahama in 2016, Ghana experienced declining economic growth. Mr. Speaker, in 2016, the real GDP growth was 3.4%. Mr. Speaker, this growth recorded in 2016 was the lowest in 23 years. The lowest in 23 years. And Mr. Speaker, since our colleagues are not debating, I will go into my lecture mood and take my time and teach. Mr. Speaker, economic growth measures the increase in the production of goods and services. Mr. Speaker, it captures economic activity. And so in their time in 2016, the economy grew at 3.4%. It captures the extent of expansion of the economy in 2016, 3.4%. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, the economy grew at 8.1%. So economic activity increased and the economy expanded at a rate of 8.1%. Mr. Speaker, again in 2018, the economy grew at 6.3%. 2019, 7%. Mr. Speaker, the growth in 2019 is one of the fastest in emerging economies in the world. Mr. Speaker, numbers don't lie. So whereas in 2016, under the first government official of the land, the economy grew at 3.4%. Presently, the economy is growing at 7%. It is even projected to grow at 6.8% in 2020. Mr. Speaker, 6.8% would have doubled the economic growth that we experienced in 2016 of 3.4%. So, Mr. Speaker, clearly, as the economy expands, jobs are created, and true to the President's words, we have a healthier economy. Mr. Speaker, again, under the first government official of the land in 2016,
Under the first government official.
yes, there was persistently high rates of inflation. Mr. Speaker, in 2016, again, the annual rate of inflation was 15.4%. Mr. Speaker, again, students here, I take my time to explain what inflation is. Mr. Speaker, the inflation rate is the percentage increase in the general price level. So if the inflation rate is 15.4%, it means that if you kept 100 Ghana cedis under your pillow, at year end, the value of the 100 Ghana cedis is now 84.5 Ghana cedis. In their time, 15.4%. Mr. Speaker, presently, the inflation rate is 7.9%. So if you kept 100 Ghana cedis under your pillow, you are prudent, you don't spend, and year, the erosion of the currency now is just 7.9% as compared to the 15.4% in their time. eroding the purchasing power of the city. So, Mr. Speaker, clearly, a lower rate of inflation would translate to improved cost of living. It translates into lower cost of borrowing. It is a healthy economy for everyone. So, Mr. Speaker, once again, numbers don't lie. Whereas it was 15.4 in their time in 2016 under the first government official of the land, now it is 7.9%. Mr. Speaker, continuing, the fiscal deficit, and again, I take my time and I explain. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal balance is the difference between revenue and expenditure. So if your revenue exceeds your expenditure, then you have a budget surplus. If the revenue is less than your expenditure, then you have a budget deficit. Mr. Speaker, in my lifetime, Ghana has never had a budget surplus. So it's been a deficit upon deficit. So the lower the deficit, the better. Mr. Speaker, in 2016, under their watch, the deficit 6.5%. Mr. Speaker, consistently the deficit has been declining. 4.8% in 2017, 3.9% in 2018, 4.8% 2019, projected to be 4.7% here again. Mr. Speaker, the government of Nana Akufo-Addo itself brought legislation to this House to legislate the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which says that the deficit cannot exceed 5% in any year. Mr. Speaker, this is the government itself tying a noose around its neck that if I exceed 5% deficit, censure the Minister of Finance. I advised him at committee that minister, don't do this. He said, I want to be a prudent finance minister. I'm going ahead with the law. That's the law that we have now. And Mr. Speaker, the fiscal deficit is declining. This has been firmed in law. So in this election year, just as under the MPP's watch in 2004, when the deficit was 2.2%, we are going to have a deficit under 5%. No reckless spending. No reckless spending. Mr. Speaker, to coordinate and monitor discipline, the government has also set up the Fiscal Responsibility Advisory Council. So not only is the minister living within his means, this advisory council is continuously monitoring what the ministry is doing. Mr. Speaker, another beautiful feature of the law is that the government is supposed to maintain a positive primary balance. And Mr. Speaker, again, I will explain what the primary balance is. Mr. Speaker, the primary balance records tax revenue. The primary balance records tax revenue minus
instead of you to keep quiet, you are
minus expenditure.
keep quiet and listen.
Having excluded interest payments. Mr. Speaker, I take it again.
Keep quiet.
The primary balance measures your revenue minus expenditure when you take out debt servicing or interest payments. So if you have a negative primary balance, it means that you are borrowing to service your debt. In 2016, they had a negative primary balance of negative 1.1, meaning they borrowed to service the debt. Under the MPP's watch, economic management team headed by Vice President Mahmoud Makpaumia, the primary balance has stayed in the positive. 2017, 0.5%. 2018, 1.4%. 2019, 0.9%. So, Mr. Speaker, I have news for them. Now, the MPP is not borrowing to pay interest because we are maintaining a positive primary balance. Mr. Speaker, the low inflation, positive primary balance, and the rest I'm talking about should translate into something. They have translated into lower interest rates. Mr. Speaker, in 2015, under the first government official of the land, interest rates were around 23%. Mr. Speaker, presently, short-term interest rates, 91-day T-bill, 14.7. Under their watch, people had incentive to place their funds with savings and loans and microfinance because they were guaranteed a high return. Mr. Speaker, presently, you will not get a return of more than 20% anywhere in the land because interest rates have declined. Mr. Speaker, as a matter of fact, lending rates in 2016, lending rates hovered around 32%. And we have evidence. The road fund borrowed at 31.9% in 2016. So those were the lending rates. As we speak, lending rates are around 23%. The Speaker, the central bank has reduced the monetary policy rate from 25.5 to 16% presently. So, Mr. Speaker, these are numbers that don't lie. These are numbers that don't lie. Mr. Speaker, I turn my attention to the exchange rate depreciation. Ghana has consistently experienced depreciating currency, a weakening currency. Mr. Speaker, as we speak today, year to date, the Ghanaian cedi is the best performing currency in the world. I didn't say the best performing in Africa. I said it's the best performing currency in the world. Mr. Speaker, the cedi is appreciating against the US dollar as we speak.
He says coronavirus.
Mr. Speaker, nobody wants to hold the greenback again. If you hold on to dollars, you lose value. And under the LPP, nobody wants to hold on to dollars. That is what is happening right now in the economy. Mr. Speaker, the cedi is exchanging against the dollar at less than 5.4 Ghana cedis presently. Mr. Speaker, I recall the Honorable Samsiahi in the past saying the cedi was appreciating the dollar. That is what is happening now, Mr. Speaker. That is what is happening now. The cedi is appreciating the dollar. Mr. Speaker, we have also built up buffers. This appreciated currency will stay. We have built up buffers. Mr. Speaker, they left 2016 with gross international reserves of $3.4 billion. As we speak, we have reserves in excess of $5 billion. Mr. Speaker, there's a buffer. We have a cushion. This currency will grow stronger and stronger. Mr. Speaker, when you do all these magnificent things in your country, there are external observers, and they rate you. Under President Akufo, Ghana achieved a credit rating of B+ in 2008. Then the first government official took over. The first government official of the land. Mr. Speaker, our credit rating that President Akufo left at B+ declined to B-. Mr. Speaker, end 2016, the credit rating of B+ had declined to B-. Mr. Speaker, the better managers of the economy took over. Now guess what? Moody's rates Ghana B3 with a positive outlook. Standard & Poor's that had rated us B+, for which we went back to B-, have now upgraded us to B with a stable outlook. Mr. Speaker, Fitch has also rated us B with a stable outlook. So this is not SBA Abua saying, this is Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch. This is not me, Mr. Speaker, this is not me. So, Mr. Speaker, now I know why they ran away from the debate. Now I know. Because you can't dispute anything I'm saying here. Now I know why. I know why they ran away from the debate. Mr. Speaker, the Eurobond that we issued recently, the coupon rate was 6.375%. Mr. Speaker, I take it again. The coupon rate on the Eurobond we issued recently was 6.375. In 2016, they went to the market. They got 9.75. So Ghana, the sovereign, was borrowing under their watch at 9.75. Now, if Ghana borrows money, we borrow at 6.375. This is about 3.4 percentage decrease in the interest rate. Mr. Speaker, we have to be careful for this country not to slide back into the hands of these people. We have to be careful. Because if a country is going to borrow at 9.375 and within a matter of 3 years, another group of persons bring it as low as 6.375, you should not take it for granted. You should not take it for granted. The speaker so clearly, the state of the economy is stronger. It is better. It is growing. It is moving forward, Mr. Speaker. If we go along this trajectory, Mr. Speaker, the city is going to exchange to the dollar under less than 5 cents. Watch. It is going to. Mr. Speaker, if we continue along this trajectory, we are going to hit the B+ rating again. So, Mr. Speaker, I will end this one here. I think I've given a fair enough lecture. People have understood this one. I thank you for the question.
Honorable members, the motion has been moved and seconded. Is for consideration of the House. But honorable members, in the interim, let me make a little variation and take item listed 5 and have the first reading of the Customs Amendment Bill 2020. Honorable Minister for Finance.
Speaker, the Finance Minister is unavailable. The Deputy Minister of Finance is holding the fort for him, and accordingly, she will do what is needful. The Speaker, it's important to know that the bill is with us in the House. It was first laid on the 19th of December 2019. What is to be done now by the Deputy Minister is to withdraw the old one that was laid, and a new one will be substituted by it being laid afresh. So that will be the task of the Deputy Minister. Speaker, if you may, grant him.
Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to withdraw the first bill that was laid on the 19th of December and then replace it with a new one. With your permission, Mr. Speaker.
Permission is granted, and you may present.
An act to amend the Customs Act 2015 at 891 to provide incentives for the automotive manufacturers and assemblers registered under the Ghana Automotive Manufacturing Development Program, provide import exemptions for the security agencies and officers of the security agencies, and for related matters.
The bill is duly presented and it is read for the first time and referred to the Joint Committee of Finance and Trade and Industry for due consideration and report. Honorable members, we go on full blast to the motion ably moved by the Honorable Minister for Information. Honorable Ifa. Honorable Ifa Antu.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I also rise to thank the President for the message on the state of the nation. In so doing, I would like to make reference to pages 7 and 8 of his message, which emphasizes the effort that government has put in trying to resuscitate the dying banking sector. Mr. Speaker, at the time of the interventions, it's on record that several of those banks that are affected were seriously undercapitalized. That risk management was poor, corporate governance was very weak, many of those banks were insolvent, banks faced liquidity challenges, there were various suspicious transactions identified, there was excessive risk-taking, and Mr. Speaker, it's also on record that there was some creative accounting practices. This led to a total collapse, Mr. Speaker, and a threat to the banking sector. Mr. Speaker, with the involvement of the government, present government, there have been some positive impact on the industry, and I would like to make reference, Mr. Speaker, to the Bank of Ghana Banking Sector Report, November 2019, which I hold in my hand, and make references to some of the developments that have occurred or happened since the cleanup exercise. Mr. Speaker, reading from the Bank of Ghana Banking Sector Report, November 2019, we realized that total assets of the banking sector grew by about 13.8% to more than 120 billion cedis. Mr. Speaker, it's important to note that about 92.2% of this growth in total assets were with domestic sources. The foreign component was only 7.8%. This should be of interest to us that the banking sector itself, Mr. Speaker, has 92.2% of total assets on their books. Mr. Speaker, there were also increases in banks' investments in bills, securities, and bonds. And the growth for the period up to October 2019 was 10.8%, increasing it to 47.47 billion. Mr. Speaker, in the past, the growth in investment in government securities and bills was about 62%. What that meant was that the banking sector was very, very risky to invest in private sector, and so banks decided to invest more in government bills than in the private sector and the SMEs. Today, we understand that that investment in securities is normalizing at about 45%. Mr. Speaker, industry credit to the portfolio also grew by 17.72%, and there was an increase in advances to about 42 billion cedis as at October. And Mr. Speaker, the reference I've given as a Bank of Ghana Banking Sector Report, November 2019. Deposits as at October, Mr. Speaker, 2019, had increased by 17.1% to almost 80 billion cedis from the 67 billion that was recorded in a year earlier. This is pointing to a renewed confidence in the banking sector as a result of the reforms. In the past, banks had relied heavily on borrowings to support their operations. But with these new revisions and the reforms, Mr. Speaker, it's good to note that total borrowings by these banks declined significantly, and that the total borrowing has now reduced from about 18 billion to 17 billion as at October. And the slowdown, Mr. Speaker, is a result of the increased capitalization of these banks, as well as the sustained growth in deposits. The industry is well capitalized, Mr. Speaker. Paid up capital is grown up by 38.4% to 9 billion cedis from the 6.6 billion that was reported in October 2018. Shareholder funds, very important, Mr. Speaker, has also grown. It's increased by about 25% to 17.34 billion from the previous 13 billion cedis. It's because of the profitability that is registered by these banks and the reserves that they keep as a result of the profitability. On the liquidity side, Mr. Speaker, the report indicates that the funding mix of banks still remains strongly on deposits. Deposits continue to support the financing of banks. But what has changed, Mr. Speaker, is that whereas in the past, banks have relied on borrowing as a secondary source of financing their businesses, today, shareholders' funds has overtaken borrowing. And it's very important for us to know the funding mix and the change that has occurred in the funding mix. Asset quality, Mr. Speaker, has improved. Looking at the non-performing loan ratio, it's been reduced from about 20.1% in October 2018 to 17.3%. And this is due to the intensified loan recovery by the banks and also good and stronger credit arrangements, management practices. Mr. Speaker, the soundness of the industry has some basic indicators, and I'd like to make reference to just a few of them to show how well the banks are now doing. I'll look at liquidity, for example. Mr. Speaker, the ratio of core liquid assets to total assets is recorded at 62%. This is big enough to show how liquid these banks are now. Capital adequacy, Mr. Speaker, I have said, is 18% above the Basel II and Basel III requirement of 13%. This is strong, and it shows how resilient the banks are. It also shows how these banks would be able to withstand losses following the banking reforms. Mr. Speaker, the cost-to-income ratio of banks has now improved from the hitherto 84% to 80%. This is good enough to suggest that there is now more efficiency in running the business of the banks. And so, Mr. Speaker, we should say that there has been some positive impact with the reformation or the reforms that the government was able to put in place. GATS, the Ghana Amalgamated Trust, Mr. Speaker, has also been able to recapitalize successfully 4 of these indigenous banks. And that is a good thing from the total package of reforms undertaken by the central bank. Mr. Speaker, I would like to make a reference again to the document and make some conclusions. 1, we now have a stronger banking sector which has emerged from the improved solvency, liquidity, and profitability. Asset quality has improved, and the bank's resilience to shocks has also strengthened. 3, key financial soundness indicators remain positive. The banking sector continues to exhibit strong prospects in the medium term. Mr. Speaker, we have learned some lessons from having a very weak banking sector, and so we do not hope to go back to this same thing, this same situation where banks would collapse, obviously, in the long run. The banking sector supervisors have taken up that responsibility and challenge with the introduction of the new corporate governance rules, and Mr. Speaker, also to ensure that they now have real-time supervision of the banks, to ensure that difficulties are quickly detected so that we can reduce or prevent similar occurrences. Mr. Speaker, I would like to, with these few words, say that His Excellency the President has done very well, and would like to thank him for his coming to the House and also to give us this goodwill message. I thank you all, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable, for your contribution. I'll call Honorable Abdullah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to support the motion. Thank him, His Excellency the President, for appearing before this August House to perform a constitutional obligation, to wit, delivery of the message on the state of the nation. Mr. Speaker, in February 21st, 2017, after His Excellency the President had been sworn into office, he came to this August House to deliver his maiden message on the state of the nation. Mr. Speaker, at paragraph 19 of the message, this is what he said, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I say nothing new or dramatic when I tell this honorable House that the economy of our country is in a bad way. Mr. Speaker, on the 20th of February, 2020, that is last week, His Excellency the President came here again to perform a constitutional obligation to which to deliver his message on the state of the nation, and this is what he said, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, our economic growth has rebounded to place Ghana among the fastest growing economies in the world at an annual average of 7%, up from 3.4% in 2016, the lowest in nearly 3 decades. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, the picture of the economy of this country was very, very bizarre. The economy was sick. The economy was ailing. The economy that the NDC government bequeathed to the MPP government, Mr. Speaker, was nothing to write home about. Mr. Speaker, this economic growth did not happen by coincidence. It is as a result of a very competent and experienced management team of His Excellency Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who is, of course, effective and very, very visionary. Mr. Speaker, every government is elected based on at times its track records, its promises, and the assurances it gives to its citizenry. Mr. Speaker, this is a social contract that the government enters into with its citizenry. That, citizens in this country will then expect the government to fulfill whatever promises that it delivers to its people. Mr. Speaker, that goes to showcase the credibility and the trustworthiness of that government. Mr. Speaker, the fact remains incontrovertible that the MPP government, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, has delivered or is delivering, as is being touted, which still remains incontroverted, that 78% of these promises, Mr. Speaker, are being delivered or have been fulfilled. Mr. Speaker, this symbolizes that NPP government is a reliable and dependable government which can therefore be trusted. Mr. Speaker, every government must be accountable. Every government must be transparent. Mr. Speaker, every government must uphold the tenets of the rule of law. In fact, that is the essence of Article 1.1 of the 1992 Constitution, which is corroborated by Article 35.1 of our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I quote Article 1.1 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, 1.1, the sovereignty of Ghana resides in the people of Ghana, in whose name and for whose welfare the powers of government are to be exercised in the manner and within the limits laid down in this constitution, unquote. Mr. Speaker, Article 35(1) also says, with your permission, if I may quote, 35(1), Ghana shall be a democratic state dedicated to the realization of freedom and justice, and accordingly, sovereignty resides in the people of Ghana, from whom government derives all its powers and authority through this constitution. Mr. Speaker, in making this transparency and accountability possible, certain measures ought to be put in place. Necessary laws will have to be enacted. Mr. Speaker, it is on record that Nana Addo Akufo-Addo government, MPP government, initiated and facilitated the passage of certain very important laws, Mr. Speaker, whose passage has been sitting in the back burner for a very long time. The Right to Information Law, or the Right to Information Act, the Companies Act, and Mr. Speaker, of course, the Witness Protection Act. Mr. Speaker, the passage of the Companies Act, for instance, has been very, very useful in the sense that the Companies Act, or the Companies Code, which was promulgated sometime in the 1960s, was in a large measure lagging behind. Mr. Speaker, a lot of novel provisions have been incorporated in the new Companies Act such that one even doesn't have to file an object when he or she is incorporating a business. Mr. Speaker, just like a natural human being, every registered company can engage in any business or switch to any business at any particular point in time without hindrance. Mr. Speaker, you don't even need to get certificate to commence business before you even start your business. You can sit in the comfort of your home, you can sit in the comfort of your office, and even electronically, Mr. Speaker, register your business. Mr. Speaker, this again did not happen by happenstance. It is more easier and more convenient to do business here in Ghana than it was in 5 years ago, or than it was specifically in the NDC era. Mr. Speaker, you cannot develop any economy without digitization. That has been one of the hallmarks of the MPP government, and this vision is being actualized by His Excellency the President, led by his able and competent Vice President. Mr. Speaker, the judiciary and then the judicial system of this country have not been left behind. It's on record that today the judiciary, under the auspices of His Excellency the President, has put in place what we call the e-justice system. Mr. Speaker, for the e-justice system, parties and lawyers can sit in the comfort of their homes, in the comfort of their office, and electronically file court processes. Mr. Speaker, you don't need, though it is on pilot basis in Accra, those of the lawyers and parties in Accra and its environs have been spared the ordeal and then the inconvenience of having to walk personally to the premises of a court to file a process. Mr. Speaker, this has been made easy by the judiciary and the judicial services under the auspices of His Excellency the President. Mr. Speaker, it is very common to hear that court files, court dockets are missing or have been missing. A person or a party goes to the court and he's told, he or she is told that his docket or her docket is missing. Such a person, after having spent so much to go to court to file a process, it will then be very regrettable for him or her to be told that his or her docket has been missing. Mr. Speaker, under the auspices of our able leader and president of this country, His Excellency Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, we have in place in the judiciary what they call case track management system. Mr. Speaker, what it does is that prison officers, police prosecutors, judiciary, lawyers, parties can sit in their homes or offices and explore the stages of cases or explore the statuses of cases. If you want to know how many adjournments have been done in respect of your case, you don't have to even go and file a search. You can click and you'll be informed accordingly. You don't even have to go to the court premises to even file or pay money for your process to be filed for you. Mr. Speaker, you can sit or you can go to the bank, pay, and everything will be reflected in the office of the registry. Mr. Speaker, convenience, speed have been brought to bear on the administration of justice. Mr. Speaker, litigation has been made simple, though litigation is not good. Administration of justice has been detailed to the doorsteps of parties. Mr. Speaker, this as a result of no other person than His Excellency Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Mr. Speaker, we have so many districts with our courts. One will have to move or travel a very long distance in order to be able to access justice. Mr. Speaker, as I'm talking now, and this fact or information can be well corroborated by the Ministry of Local Government. The Deputy Minister for Local Government is sitting just by me, that Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo has earmarked funds for the construction of 100 courts. Mr. Speaker, this is unprecedented. This is unprecedented. 100 courts. Mr. Speaker, in 2008 alone, His Excellency the President engaged about 28 judges just within 1 year. Mr. Speaker, this has never happened in the history of this country. Mr. Speaker, education is a constitutional right. Education is a constitutional right. That explains why Article 25(1) of the Constitution says the following. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, if I may quote, all persons shall have the right to equal educational opportunities and facilities, and with a view to achieving the full realization of that right. Mr. Speaker, SDGs Goal 4 aims to ensure, I quote, inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Mr. Speaker, the goal ensures that all girls and boys complete free primary and secondary education by 2030. Mr. Speaker, our President, Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, is complying with Article 25(1) of the Constitution, and he is realizing SDG Goal 4, which says that every girl, every boy must have primary and secondary education by year 2030. Mr. Speaker, our government, MPP government, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, believe that the only way to give a bright future to our teeming youth is to guarantee an educated and skilled workforce. Mr. Speaker, if you read the economic history of every established country, the history will tell you that no nation can develop if you leave your teeming youth behind, unskilled and uneducated. Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is that no child in this country of school-going age is being left behind. Mr. Speaker, let me end my presentation with a quote from the message on the state of the nation delivered by His Excellency the President. Mr. Speaker, I want to quote from page 32 of the speech, and it reads like this. Mr. Speaker, we have done much more than we inherited. We are creating conditions for young people to have hope again. We are determined to do more. Things are working in Ghana, and Ghana is surely changing. Mr. Speaker, our nation is in good health and in good and competent hands. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Chairman of the Constitutional and Legal Committee, for your contribution. Honorable Afenyo Maki.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity.
After which the First Deputy Speaker will take the chair anytime from now.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to add my voice to the debate on the floor. Mr. Speaker, as we all know, in accord with our constitutional custom, Mr. President appeared before us and delivered a message on the state of the nation. Mr. Speaker, the majority decided to accord Mr. President the respect. We stayed in the House, listening to him in the chamber, whereas others decided to go into their offices to watch on TV. Mr. Speaker, today we are debating this message for Ghanaians to know the real issues that were raised, so Ghanaians will see what this government is doing, is capable of doing, so that, Mr. Speaker, they will be more than fortified in their decision they take on this government. Mr. Speaker, let me take all of us down memory lane. And Mr. Speaker, before I proceed, I may want to crave your indulgence to humbly, Mr. Speaker, urge, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable, address me.
Mr. Speaker, very well.
Keep your eyes on the ball.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I am keeping my eyes on the ball, but I'm being obstructed with a loud noise.
Honorable, keep your eyes on the ball.
Very well, Mr. Speaker. I keep my eyes on the ball, and whilst I make my submission, I encourage my colleagues in the minority to be quiet since they've decided not to debate, so that I can make my submissions in peace. Mr. Speaker, let's do some history. 1981, 31st December, saw another revolution. That revolution lasted for 11 years. Thereafter, we initiated a constitutional practice. And in that constitutional practice, the same group that ruled for 11 years had the opportunity to rule for 8 more years, totaling 19 years. Then, Mr. Speaker, by the grace of God, we had a new dispensation led by John Ajekum Kufuor and his NPP. They had only 8 years. Soon thereafter, we had another dispensation of the same old group that had 19 years, coming in first 4 years, and second, with a very controversial 4 years, in total making 8 years. If you add 8 to 19, 27. Mr. Speaker, if you look at their 27 years in office and the 8 years of Kufuor-led MPP government and this Nanadu government, which is in its 4th year, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, our friends who have had 27 years cannot boast of a single social intervention policy they have initiated and implemented successfully. They claim they are social democrats. They claim that they are in for the downtrodden. But what do they say when issues of social inclusiveness are raised? They say it is not possible. The money is not there. Mr. Speaker, we were in this country when Mr. President talked about free SHS. But we were told by our friends who have been in office for 27 years that it is not possible. But what do we see today? That which was not possible was seen by another person as probable, and today has become a reality. Children are enjoying the free SHS. Mr. Speaker, I am sure, if my calculation is right, this September, the first batch of the free SHS beneficiaries will be entering the university. It means that the savings parents made will go into the university education. And it has lessened the burden on all of us MPs who were overburdened with the payment of school fees to various secondary schools. Mr. Speaker, added to that is opportunity for children to get access to well-respected schools in this country. Mr. Speaker, previously we all know the struggle to have access to the St. Augustine's, the Infante Pim, the Adisadel, the Timota, and all that. Today, people who would not have had the opportunity are getting the opportunity. This is something that we can safely describe as unprecedented, which in their time they could not. So, Mr. Speaker, going back to the fact check, the NDC, which is today is in opposition and is itching to come back to power, and has decided to disrespect our constitution by boycotting the state of the nation. Mr. Speaker, is benefiting from the good policies of this government. Mr. Speaker, apart from the free SHS, we know the opportunities in the private sector that today Ghanaians are enjoying. Mr. Speaker, we were here in this chamber when in 2015, His Excellency President John Mahama, in delivering a message on the state of the nation, said that it was as a result of poor supervision by Bank of Ghana that we were experiencing financial crisis in this country. The government distanced itself. The government did not take responsibility. Mr. Speaker, this mess was transferred to the new government, and thank God that MPP took office. Mr. Speaker, Nanado's government did not do blame game. Yes. Nanado's government did not do blame game. What the Nanado government did was to move swiftly into action, intervene, and resolve the issues. Today you see our friends who have refused to debate but are busily talking and obstructing this debate, making political argument all over on the streets of Accra. What do they seek to achieve? Gain political advantage. Meanwhile, some of them have had their investment with some of these questionable financial institutions that they poorly supervise, and they are getting their monies being paid back. Yet they don't come here and praise the government. The very monies that this government could have invested in the roads in Elmina, could have invested at Ningo Pram. The very money that this government could have invested at Ho Central, the very money that this government could have invested at Norton, the very money that this government could have invested at Asawasi, Mr. Speaker, the very money that this government could have invested at Ablekuma South. Mr. Speaker, these are the monies that are being used to pay. Mr. Speaker, these are the very monies that are being used to pay vulnerable Ghanaians who have lost their investments. Yet we have seen more questions being filed by the same minority that supervise this mess, calling on government to construct roads, calling on government to improve on infrastructure. How can you eat your cake and still expect to have it? The Latin man says, et nihilus, et nihilus. You can't place something on nothing. How do you expect it to stand? It will fall. You destroy the very foundation of this economy, and if this government had behaved the way you behaved, we will allow the mess to go on, and then there will be no money. But Mr. Speaker, we are making the country better. And we have not been in office for even 16 years. Mr. Speaker, Pro East deserves a lot of projects. But what do we see? A lot of the people at Pro East, petty traders, lost their investment, and this government is paying those people. Mr. Speaker, we could have done more. Mr. Speaker, I mean Pro East where Honorable Doctor...
Honorable, don't invite anybody.
Mr. Speaker, it's...
Concentrate on your country.
Mr. Speaker, I am doing so. Mr. Speaker, he shouted he came. Mr. Speaker, he did. Mr. Speaker, he knows that in his constituency, people are being paid. I am aware of the first 10,000. I am again aware of the 20,000. And more people who fall below are being paid. Mr. Speaker, I know that Ningo Pram, people who lost investment, are receiving payments. I know. Mr. Speaker, my own good friend, Honorable Bawa, his constituents are receiving money. If you had been prudent in the management of the economy, if you had properly engaged Bank of Ghana, those appointees got their position because your administration appointed them. Yet, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama came here, stood here and said that poor supervision. Go and check page 14 of that message on the state of the nation. I know you are itching to debate, but you have restrained yourself and you are painfully suffering for that. All you can do is to listen in silence. Mr. Speaker, I'm lecturing them on the fact that Mr. President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, who lost the elections in 2016, came here and told us that Bank of Ghana has been irresponsible. But as a leader, he did not take responsibility. Today, we are able to manage and sustain the free SHS program. You are surprised. You are wondering how we are doing that. You are wondering. The naysayers, Mr. Speaker, to the extent that they say they are going to review it to what? What are you going to do? You're going to review? Mr. Speaker, it's not possible. I know the Deputy Attorney General then, my own respected colleague, Dr. Dominic Ayeni. Mr. Speaker, he was the Deputy Attorney General. I don't know whether he advised Bank of Ghana and they ignored, or he refused to advise Bank of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, when the mess came to his attention, I don't know what he did as Deputy Attorney General, as the Chief Legal Advisor of the government. Mr. Speaker, I don't know what my brother Samuel Okudjetro Abraka did when people took contract and were refusing to execute, when they promised 200 day schools and they could only achieve about 30 to 40%. Were you supervising, Mr. Speaker? These are facts.
Are you done?
Mr. Speaker?
Are you done in your contribution?
Mr. Speaker?
Are you done with your contribution?
Mr. Speaker, if you want me done, I will be done.
If you are done, I'll take the...
Mr. Speaker, I have 20 minutes, so says Mr. Majority Leader.
Then
I've
can
done
you
9 minutes.
go on with the contribution?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm doing so, but I cite examples. Mr. Speaker, I cited, these are constituency specific. They were there, Mr. Speaker, comparing yesterday and today.
Honorable Member, you know that we are not permitted to make personal references.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, I'm not doing so. In his official capacity, Mr. Speaker, it is my contention that as Deputy Minister who was in charge of that program, he appeared before us. I was a member of the Finance Committee. He came touting the issue of free day schools and all that. He was all over defending. He could not supervise properly. He could not see to it that those contracts were properly awarded. There are letters from the Minister of Education's office that people took contract and abandoned it. And this government is constructing these e-blocks. Today, get fund. Go and check, Mr. Speaker. People's certificates are not delaying at get fund. It's a matter of record. Mr. Speaker, let's come to common fund. I want to debate them on common fund. This government has lived up to expectation. Projects that they were here on this House floor claiming that were not being constructed are being constructed. I want a single one of them to get up, especially Honorable Kwame Agoja, to tell me that nothing at all is happening in his constituency. Apart from the politics that you play in your constituency, tell the whole country that no project is happening in your constituency. That you are getting nothing. Can you say so? Can Honorable Ajafo say so? Don't be busy reading. Respond if I'm lying. Mr. Speaker, they cannot say so.
This country, Mr. Speaker, I can see that the chief whip, minority chief whip is prompting you. Do you want to speak into the mic, sir? Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's all right with you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we have to be responsible in this chamber. People have to be responsible. Mr. Speaker, you drew our colleague attention that he could not be inviting members. He went on and just calling names after names. So it's not being fair to the members. And I think he has to be very responsible in the way he's carrying himself. Because I'm very, very clear. You cannot be insinuating around people's names. Mr. Speaker, so he needs to be called to order. If you have chosen to debate, it's up to you. It is our right to abstain. And that's a political tool that is used in parliamentary parties. You cannot sit and deliberately try to call people names, thinking that will incite people to talk. You have to be responsible in the way you act. Other than that, we'll be forced to start calling you names too. Please.
Mr. Speaker, I am a student of parliamentary jurisprudence. And I know how to act within the remit of this parliamentary jurisprudence. I will never call a colleague any name. I will never insinuate. I am arguing, grounded same on fact. I am arguing on fact. Are you saying, honorable, respected minority chief whip, that this government has done nothing in your constituency within the last 3 years? Can honorable, Mr. Speaker, I'm arguing on fact.
Please. Let me draw your attention to Order 93.1. And it says there that you cannot make personal allusions. I've stated so. You can make reference to the constituency, but leave out the member's name. I've pointed that out to you. Please, let's not go back there.
Mr. Speaker, we are guided. And you know, when you rule, we yield in obedience. But Mr. Speaker, before I proceed, I humbly call on you to make a determination on a statement made by Honorable Mutaka to the effect that my statement, which refers to specific constituencies and specific officers and members of parliament, is irresponsible. Mr. Speaker, if he walking out on the president is not irresponsible, he cannot. It is very rich on his part to make that statement. Mr. Speaker, I humbly call on him to withdraw and apologize to me. Mr. Speaker, your ruling I will comply with. He should withdraw.
Honorable member, kindly draw my attention to the specific reference to the man is on his seat. At what point, under which order are you asking me to make a ruling?
Mr. Speaker, under the general rule of... oh, please, are you supposed... What's this? Mr. Speaker... Mr. Speaker, may we refer ourselves to Order 33.2. 93.2, Mr. Speaker, 93.2. Yes, Mr. Speaker, 93.2, even if, Mr. Speaker, the specific provision, 93.2.
In temperate language.
Mr. Speaker, may I read with your leave? Yeah. Mr. Speaker, it shall be out of order to use offensive, abusive, insulting, blasphemous, or unbecoming words, or to impute improper motives to any other member, or to make personal allusions. Mr. Speaker, on the strength of this provision, and relying on an earlier sentiment by
Honorable Muntaka, who has had set of the cause to complain about certain phrases used by the majority leader against him, I am saying that the use of the word irresponsible of sins against this provision, and he should be called upon, because he is a very sensitive person. He is very sensitive, and he will not take kindly to this. He should withdraw and apologize. Mr. Speaker, I so apply.
Honorable Minority Chief Whip, do you want to respond to that before I make a ruling?
Mr. Speaker, I don't want. It's not my intention to respond to him.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Mr. Speaker, I said I don't want to respond to him.
Honorable members, I had earlier advised my friend, the honorable member on his feet, to keep away from making personal allusions. He kept doing the same thing. The honorable member made reference to being responsible. It's in reference to respecting the rules as we have pointed out to him. In that respect, I don't consider it offensive, and therefore, I overrule the objection. You may proceed, and please be guided by 93.2, which you referred to, personal allusions.
Mr. Speaker, I intend to enjoy the privilege accorded me by you to debate. Mr. Speaker, vital and material preliminary matters have arisen, and I so apply to you, Mr. Speaker, to make a determination to enable me proceed in peace. Mr. Speaker, I am in your hands entirely. Mr. Speaker, to what extent does a reference to a member become a personal allusion? Mr. Speaker, if I say I'm making an application and you are to keep quiet, Mr. Speaker, they are intimidating. These are my juniors. They are my juniors. You are my junior, and you are obstructing me. I'm making an application. Mr. Speaker, with all respect, I didn't make a personal allusion. I made a specific reference, and I made reference to that. Mr. Speaker, I think that he quoted me out of context. And on the basis of that, Mr. Speaker, I pray that the specific context I place the submission must be looked at, rather than the general view that if you mention a member's name, it amounts to a personal allusion. It is not so, Mr. Speaker. I humbly pray that such should be considered as I proceed. Mr. Speaker, in making my next point, it is my case that the posture of the minority in coming into the chamber, exchanging pleasantries, and just walking out is most irresponsible. Especially when the minority was led by its leaders, including the minority chief whip. Very irresponsible to walk out on the fair gentleman of the land. To walk out on him is most irresponsible. And for all of them to go and sit in their offices and watch is again most irresponsible. And then come back and sit in this chamber and claim that you are not participating is another most irresponsible conduct. To deny your constituent the opportunity to express your view on the constitutional matter is again irresponsible. To even sit in the chamber, say you are not talking, yet be murmuring is again irresponsible. But Mr. Speaker, we are law abiding. we are very responsible and law-abiding.
Which is more responsible to go and eat the food.
Mr. Speaker, this government deserves,
Honourable Member Wenda.
Mr. Speaker, this government deserves an opportunity to serve beyond 2020.
Yeah.
This government wants to ensure certainty in the election ahead. That is why it has taken a position to support the need to have a new register as expressed by the Electoral Commission. This government, even in opposition, demonstrated its respect for the rule of law by going to court to challenge election results. And the outcome of it was a huge margin of 1 million votes, which denied those who were having their day the opportunity of tampering with election results. Mr. Speaker, with what we are seeing today, the question is, has NDC changed its leadership? Has NDC brought on board new men and women? Or it is the same old NDC fighting its founder, bringing back the same leader who said that he could not implement free SHS, who said he could not ensure the payment of nursing training allowances, and said that, Mr. Speaker, we've taken off the meat, it's left with bare bones. Mr. Speaker, what new is NDC introducing? In their own manifesto of 2008 and 2012, especially that their policy on one-time premium, is a one-time premium, Mr. Speaker, which they abandoned when they had their controversial second term. Is there anything new? There's none. In reality, Honorable Ayafo, there's none. There's none in reality. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I hold a view most humbly that should this government get an opportunity,
Your time is up.
Mr. Speaker, should this government get the opportunity to rule for another 4 years? And Mr. Speaker, in making this submission, I'm not referring to personalities, I'm talking about the party upon which shoulders an individual right to office, MPP. If this MPP party gets another opportunity, Mr. Speaker, we will see a true, real transformation, not that which, Mr. Speaker, with respect, I'm concluding. Honorable,
Thank you very much.
Kodo, do you want to say something? Mr. Speaker, I conclude. You want to say something, say it.
Honourable Leader. Honourable Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I believe we can come to item number 9 and continue with the Narcotics Control Commission bill.
Item number 9, Narcotics Control Commission Bill 2019 at the consideration stage. Item 9I, Clause 50. Clause 50, 50. Yes, Chairman of the committee.
Mr. Speaker, I have the permission of the chairman of the committee to move on with the consideration of the bill. Mr. Speaker, clause 50, subclause 2, line 1, we are, after drag, we are inserting plant. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the proposed amendment is for the consideration of the House. Very well. As many as are in favor of the proposed amendment, say aye. Aye. All against, say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Item II. Honourable Ayafo, yes.
Mr. Speaker, before you move to item II, which is clause 50, subclause 3, Mr. Speaker, with your leave, may I move that the entire clause 52 be deleted? Mr. Speaker, the clause 52 states, a person whose vehicle is used to transport narcotics drug, is liable to pay a penalty of no more than 1,250 penalty units to the commission before the vehicle is released to that person. Mr. Speaker, if you look at this by way of a crime, I submit that two things constitute a crime: the act and the intention. Mr. Speaker, if you look at it as a civil penalty, then there will be a need to establish that the driver at all material time in control of the vehicle is acting in the course of employment. Mr. Speaker, the owner of a vehicle is at home and has employed a driver to drive a vehicle. In the process, the driver has decided to engage in unlawful business. This, even in a civil forum, the driver cannot be acting in the course of employment for the owner of the vehicle to be vicariously liable to pay a penalty of 2,250, which is equivalent to about 15,000 Ghana cedis, up to 15,000 Ghana cedis. And Mr. Speaker, if it is a crime, there is also no vicarious liability when it comes to a crime being committed. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, to legislate, to say that a driver of vehicle who is sitting somewhere should be liable to pay this penalty just because his driver